London, 1944. The air was thick with the dust of shattered glass and the constant drone of air raid sirens, a symphony of destruction that had become the city's soundtrack. Amidst this chaos, in a makeshift armory humming with the clatter of steel on steel, a colonel of the Special Operations Executive, or SOE, watched a young woman. She was a ghost, her face pale and gaunt, her hands, delicate yet calloused, moved with a practiced grace as she meticulously disassembled an old Lee Enfield rifle. He'd seen thousands like her, silent, stoic, and burdened by a war that had aged them beyond their years. But there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of an ancient fire that burned beneath the surface of her exhaustion. He'd asked her name, and she'd given him a name that didn't matter. What mattered was the quiet confidence in her movements, the way she handled the cold steel as if it were an extension of her own body. He was a man of logic and rank, a man who believed he'd seen everything the war could throw at him. But as she handed him the perfectly restored rifle, a faint, almost imperceptible scar tracing the line of her jaw, he knew he was wrong. He was about to learn that the girl before him was no ordinary soldier, but a phantom of the French resistance, a legend whispered about in hushed tones, a woman who had once led a mission so audacious, so daring it was still classified as a myth. The colonel, a man named Alistair Finch, stood in the dim light of the armory, the Lee Enfield rifle feeling surprisingly light in his hands. Its wooden stock was smooth, the metal parts oiled and gleaming, a stark contrast to the grime and wear of the war that surrounded them. He looked at the girl again. Her name, she had said, was Anya. Her uniform, though clean, was a size too large, hanging loosely on her frame. The faint scar on her jaw was a testament to something, an untold story etched onto her skin. Alistair, a veteran of the Great War and now a senior officer in the SOE, prided himself on his ability to read people. He saw the trauma in the eyes of his agents, the weariness in their shoulders, the unsaid goodbyes in their silence. But with Anya it was different. There was a stillness about her, a profound calm that was almost unsettling. It was the calm of a deep lake, a surface placid and still, but hiding unknown depths. Alistair gestured towards a small, cluttered office in the corner of the armory. "Anya," he said, his voice a low rumble, "come with me. We need to talk." She followed without a word, her movements silent, almost feline. The office was small, filled with stacks of documents, maps, and the faint smell of tobacco and stale coffee. Alistair sat behind a desk and gestured to a worn wooden chair opposite him. She sat, her hands resting in her lap, her gaze steady, meeting his without flinching. "I've been told you're one of the new recruits," Alistair began, his voice official. "Sent back from France. The reports are sparse. They say you were part of a team, a small unit working with the French resistance." Anya nodded slowly. "And now you're here. In London. A new assignment?" "I don't know," she replied, her voice soft with a faint French lilt, a melodic echo of a world she had left behind. "They told me to report here. They said you would have the details." Alistair leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his gaze penetrating. He was trying to find a crack in her composure, a chink in the armor she had built around herself. But there was nothing. "I'm the head of Section F," he said, "the French section. I've been briefed on every mission, every team, every agent that goes in and out of that country. I read the reports on your team's mission. You were codenamed Le Foyer. The mission was to disrupt German supply lines in the Limousin region. The report says the mission was a success, but the details are vague. It simply says the mission was completed and the team was exfiltrated. Nothing about what happened, who you were with, or what you did." Anya's eyes remained fixed on his. "We did what we were sent to do," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "We blew up the bridges, we ambushed the convoys. We made it impossible for the Germans to move their supplies." Alistair's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's it?" he asked. "Just we blew up the bridges? You were a team of 5. The reports say only 2 of you made it back. Where are the others, Anya?" Her face remained a mask. She said nothing. Alistair pushed a file across the desk, a thin folder with a single name on it. I've read the debriefings, Anya. I've seen the reports. But the reports don't match up. The dates are wrong. The locations are off. It's like someone went back and rewrote the history of your mission. I need to know what really happened. She looked at the folder, her hands still in her lap. Her silence was a wall he couldn't breach. Anya, he said, his voice softening, I'm not the Gestapo. We're on the same side. We need to know what you saw, what you did. We need to learn from your experience so we can help the others. We need to know what happened to your team. The truth, Anya, the whole truth. He watched her closely. Her knuckles were turning white as she clenched her hands in her lap. He saw a flicker of something, a fleeting shadow of pain and loss in her eyes. It was a brief, almost imperceptible crack in her composure. Then it was gone. She lifted her head, and her eyes once again were as still and empty as a winter sky. The truth is a complicated thing, Colonel, she said, her voice a whisper. Sometimes the truth can do more harm than a lie. Some stories are better left untold. Alistair knew then that he was dealing with something far more complex than a simple soldier. He was dealing with a ghost, a survivor who had seen things that had forever changed her. He watched her for a long time, the silence in the room heavy with unspoken words. He knew she was holding something back, a secret so profound it had to be buried. But what was it? What had happened on that mission that was so terrible, so classified, that even the official reports were a work of fiction? And why was she, a simple agent, a simple radio operator from a family of farmers, at the center of it all? As he looked at her, he realized that he had no idea who she really was. The report said she was a radio operator, but the way she'd handled that rifle, with a practiced ease that bespoke years of training, a lifetime of intimacy with weapons, told a different story. And he was going to find out what that story was, no matter what it took. The first step, he decided, was to show her that he wasn't just another officer, but a man who understood what she had gone through. A man who was willing to listen. He closed the file and pushed it back across the desk. All right, Anya, he said. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me about France. Tell me about your team. About the mission. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. Tell me everything. Anya took a deep breath, and for the first time since she had walked into the room, she showed a hint of emotion. Not of pain, but of defiance. There's nothing to tell, she said, her voice steady now, resolute. The mission was a success. We all did our part. That's all you need to know. Alistair knew he was at a dead end, but he also knew that he couldn't let it go. Not with the report so full of holes, not with the look in her eyes, not with the quiet way she had fixed that old rifle. There was a mystery here, a puzzle that needed to be solved. And Alistair Finch had an unrelenting nature when it came to puzzles. He would find the answers even if he had to go to France himself to find them. He rose from his chair, a silent challenge in his eyes. Anya, he said, I have a new assignment for you. You'll be assisting me directly, effective immediately. She looked at him, surprised. Assisting you with what, Colonel? Alistair smiled, a thin, humorless smile. With finding out what happened to your team. With finding out what really happened in France. Anya's quiet composure shattered, replaced by a flash of anger that she quickly suppressed. Her eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment, Alistair saw the fire he had sensed earlier, a blazing inferno of defiance and fury. I told you, Colonel, she said, her voice low and dangerous. There is nothing to find out. The reports say you were a radio operator, Anya, Alistair countered, his voice steady. They say you stayed in the hideout, transmitting messages and receiving orders. They say you had no combat experience. But I watched you, Anya. I watched you handle that rifle. You're not a radio operator. You're a soldier. A very good one. And I want to know why the files say otherwise. I want to know why someone went to such lengths to bury your story. He saw the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between a fierce need to protect her past and a simmering desire to finally reveal the truth. Alistair knew he had to push, but gently. He had to show her that he was an ally, not an interrogator. Anya, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The reports are a lie, and I have a feeling that if I'm not careful, you'll disappear just like the others. We're living in a time of shadows and whispers, a time when those in power prefer to have their secrets remain secrets. But not me. I need to know the truth. For the sake of the men and women still on the ground in France. For the sake of your team. Anya's shoulders slumped. The defiance drained from her, leaving behind only the profound weariness he had noticed from the start. She looked at him, a silent plea in her eyes. He knew he had to be patient. He gestured to the 2 chairs and sat down again, a silent invitation for her to do the same. After a long moment, she slowly sank back into her chair. Her hands, which had been clenched, now rested loosely in her lap. She took a deep, shaky breath, and when she began to speak, her voice was a ghost of its former self. "My name is not Anya," she began. "My name is Elise. Elise Dubois." Alistair listened, not interrupting, letting her unravel the long, knotted thread of her story at her own pace. "I was a radio operator. A good one. I was part of a team, Le Foyer, 5 of us, led by a man named Jean-Paul, a strong man, a brave man. He was like a father to all of us." She paused, her eyes glazing over with a painful memory. "We were successful. We blew up bridges, we sabotaged supply lines. The Germans were furious. They were hunting us like animals." Her voice grew stronger, a narrative of courage and defiance taking shape. "Then one day we received a new set of orders. A mission from London. We were told to go to a small village in the Limousin, a place called Oradour-sur-Glane. We were to make contact with a new cell, a group of resistance fighters who had just been formed. It was supposed to be a simple mission, an exchange of information, a transfer of supplies. But it was a trap set by the Gestapo. We walked right into it." Alistair sat frozen, his mind reeling. Oradour-sur-Glane. The name was a phantom, a whisper on the wind, a village that had been erased from the map. The SOE reports had been vague about the incident. An omission that Alistair now understood was a deliberate attempt to suppress the truth. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "The Gestapo were waiting for us," Elise continued, her voice now a low, flat monotone, a detached narrative of a horror she had lived through. "They ambushed us. Jean-Paul and 2 others were killed instantly. I was shot in the shoulder. But I managed to escape. I ran. I ran for days, hiding in the woods, living on roots and berries. I was alone, wounded, and terrified. But I couldn't stop running. I knew they would be coming after me. I knew they would be looking for the radio operator, for the one who knew the secrets, the one who had the codes." She paused, her eyes dark with a memory that was too terrible to be put into words. "And they did come after me. I was hiding in a barn and they came. But they weren't Gestapo. They were a special unit, an assassination squad. I could tell by the way they moved, the way they held their weapons. They were professionals. They were hunting me, and they had a name for me. They called me the Ghost." Alistair's face was a mask of shock. "An assassination squad? A special unit hunting down an SOE radio operator? This was more than just a failed mission. This was a conspiracy." "Why?" he asked, the word a simple gasp. "Why would they go to such lengths? You were just a radio operator. There must have been something else. Something you had. Something you knew." Elise shook her head, a slow, mournful gesture. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what they were after. All I know is that they were trying to kill me, and I was not going to let them. I fought back. I took their guns, their knives. I learned how to move in the shadows, how to use the land to my advantage. They were the hunters, but I became the hunted. I killed them, one by one. It was the only way I could survive. And when it was over, I was the last one left. I was alone, a ghost. And when the SOE found me a week later, they didn't believe me. They didn't believe that a simple radio operator could have survived. They didn't believe that I could have defeated a German assassination squad. So they classified my story. They changed my name. They erased my past. They made me a different person. They made me Anya." Alistair sat in stunned silence. The story was incredible, a narrative of survival and brutality that was more like a myth than a reality. But he saw the truth in her eyes, the raw pain and the profound loneliness of a woman who had been through an unimaginable ordeal and had come out on the other side, alone and forgotten. "And the scar?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elise reached up and touched the faint line on her jaw. "A souvenir," she said, a faint, bitter smile on her lips. "From the last one. I was hiding in a barn. He found me. He was a brute. But I was faster. I was smarter. I had nothing to lose. I took his knife. And I killed him. And then I ran. And I ran. And I ran until I collapsed. The story hung in the air, a chilling testament to the horrors of war and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Alistair looked at her, seeing her not as a simple agent, but as a legend. He saw the fire that had burned in her eyes, the raw, untamed power that had allowed her to survive. And he knew that he had to help her. He had to uncover the truth, to bring her story into the light. He had to find out why the Germans were so desperate to kill her, and what she had that was so important that it was worth erasing her from the history books. He leaned forward, his voice a low, fierce whisper. "Elise," he said, "you are not alone anymore. Your story will not be forgotten. We will find out what they were after. We will find out who gave them the information. We will find out who betrayed your team. We will find out what happened in Oradour-sur-Glane, and we will make them pay." A flicker of hope, of something akin to gratitude, appeared in her eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by the familiar mask of stoicism. "It's too late, Colonel," she said. "The trail is cold. Everyone is gone. The mission is over. There's nothing left." But Alistair knew better. He knew that the war was far from over, and he knew that the ghost of Oradour-sur-Glane was about to come back to life. The moment Elise left his office, Alistair Finch was on his feet, his mind a whirlwind of names, dates, and places. The story of Oradour-sur-Glane, as told by Elise, was a seismic event, a revelation that shattered everything he thought he knew about Section F and its operations. He paced the small, cluttered room, his thoughts a chaotic jumble. Why would London send a radio operator to a new cell in a region known to be a hotbed of German activity? Why would a German assassination squad be dispatched to hunt down a single, low-ranking agent? And most importantly, what was it about this mission that was so sensitive, so dangerous, that it had to be buried under layers of falsehoods? He grabbed a fresh file and a pencil, his movements quick and decisive. He had to start over, to build a new timeline, a new narrative based on Elise's testimony. He had to assume everything he had read was a lie. He began by cross-referencing the mission reports. He pulled up the files for Le Foyer, the code name for Elise's team. The official report was a masterpiece of vagueness, a thin veneer of success built on a foundation of lies. It mentioned the disruption of German supply lines, the demolition of a key bridge, and the successful exfiltration of the team's 2 remaining members. There was no mention of Oradour-sur-Glane, no mention of the ambush, and no mention of the 3 dead agents. Alistair knew this was a deliberate act of suppression. But why? He then pulled up the classified report on the Oradour-sur-Glane incident. The file was thin, almost empty. It simply stated that the village had been the site of a German pacification effort, an act of retribution for resistance activity. The report concluded with a single chilling sentence. "All contact with the Oradour cell has been lost. The mission is considered a total loss." Alistair's blood ran cold. The report was a lie. The Oradour cell wasn't a total loss. It was a trap, a deliberate setup. He was about to dig deeper when a knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. A young lieutenant, his face pale and anxious, entered the room. "Colonel," he said, his voice a barely audible whisper, "there's a message from France. It's a coded transmission." "It's from Le Foyer." Alistair froze. "That's impossible," he said. "Le Foyer was terminated. The 2 remaining members, they're here, in London, and the other 3, they're dead. There's no one left to send a message." The lieutenant's hands trembled as he placed a crumpled piece of paper on the desk. "Sir, it's the code. It's their code. The personal one. The one they were supposed to use in case of an emergency." Alistair snatched the paper, his heart pounding in his chest. He deciphered the code, his eyes scanning the message, the words jumping off the page at him. "The Eagle is on the move. The package is secure." "The package is not what you think. It's not a person. It's a list. The list of collaborators. And one of them is in London. One of them is a part of SOE. He is a high-ranking officer. He is the one who set the trap. He is the one who betrayed us. He is the one who wants to silence us. He is the one who wants the list back." The message ended there, an abrupt and terrifying revelation. Alistair's mind reeled. A collaborator in SOE? A high-ranking officer? It all made sense now. The vague reports, the buried missions, the assassination squad, the rewritten history. Someone in London was trying to cover their tracks. Someone was trying to erase Elise's story because her survival was a threat to their own. Her survival meant the truth could get out. The truth about a list of collaborators. A list that could bring down the entire French resistance. A list that could expose a high-ranking traitor in the heart of SOE itself. Alistair's hands, which had been steady for decades, now trembled as he held the message. This was no longer just about a single agent and a failed mission. This was about a conspiracy, a betrayal that reached the highest echelons of British intelligence. He had to act quickly, but he also had to be careful. The enemy was not just in France, but in London in his own office. The enemy was a ghost, a phantom who could be anyone, a colleague, a friend, a superior. He knew he couldn't trust anyone. Not the young lieutenant, not his superiors, not even his closest friends in the organization. He was on his own. He needed to find the source of the message, to find the second surviving member of Le Foyer. He had to find them before the traitor did. He had to find the list, and he had to do it without anyone knowing. He looked at the crumpled piece of paper in his hands, the words a silent scream. The message was from a woman named Cécile. She was the other surviving member of the team. The report had said she was a courier, a girl with a penchant for speed and a knack for disappearing in a crowd. And now she was in London, just like Elise. And she had the list. Alistair's mind raced, a plan taking shape in the chaotic whirlwind of his thoughts. He needed to find her. He needed to get the list. And he needed to protect Elise. He knew the traitor would come for her, too. He knew that the moment they realized she had talked, they would move to silence her for good. He had to be one step ahead. He had to be faster, smarter, more ruthless than a man he didn't even know. He folded the message and put it in his pocket, a silent promise to himself. He would not let this conspiracy win. He would not let Elise's sacrifice be in vain. And he would not rest until he had exposed the traitor. But he also knew that he was on a clock, a very short clock. He had no idea where Cécile was, and he had no idea who the traitor was. He was a man with a target on his back, a man chasing a ghost, a man about to be betrayed. Alistair knew he couldn't act on his own. He needed a partner, someone he could trust implicitly, someone who was not a part of the SOE hierarchy. His mind went to a name he had not thought of in years, Inspector Thomas Mallory of Scotland Yard. Mallory was a bulldog of a man, an old friend from the Great War, a man of integrity and unwavering loyalty. He was a man who believed in the truth, no matter how ugly or dangerous it was. Alistair took a taxi to Mallory's office, the ride a blur of anxious anticipation. He found Mallory in his usual state, hunched over a pile of reports, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on his desk, and a perpetual scowl on his face. "Alistair," Mallory said, his voice a low growl, "to what do I owe the pleasure? Last I heard, you were playing spy games in France. Thought you'd be too busy to bother with an old copper." Alistair didn't waste time with pleasantries. He pulled the coded message from his pocket and laid it on Mallory's desk. "Tom," he said, his voice low and urgent, "this is a matter of national security. It's a matter of life and death. I need your help. I need your trust. And I need you to do something that goes against every rule in your book. I need you to believe me, no matter how crazy this sounds." Mallory picked up the message, his scowl deepening as he deciphered the cryptic words. His eyes widened as he read the final line. "He is the one who set the trap. He is the one who betrayed us. He is the one who wants the list back." Mallory looked at Alistair, his eyes filled with a new kind of intensity. "A list of collaborators? And a traitor in SOE? Alistair, this is impossible. This is a fairy tale. Our boys, they wouldn't—" "Tom," Alistair interrupted, his voice sharp and unyielding, "the girl who sent this message, she's here. In London. She's one of the 2 survivors. And the other survivor, a girl named Elise, she told me what happened. She told me the truth. She told me about the ambush in Oradour-sur-Glane, the German assassination squad, the lies in the reports. She told me that her mission was a setup, and that the person responsible is a high-ranking officer in SOE. Mallory sat back in his chair, the weight of the revelation settling on him. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, his face a mixture of disbelief and grim acceptance. He knew Alistair. He knew his friend was a man of logic and reason, a man who wouldn't risk his life, his career, and his reputation on a hunch. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice low and serious. "I want you to find the girl, Cecile," Alistair replied. "She's a courier. She's carrying the list, and I want you to do it quietly. I want you to do it without anyone in your department or mine knowing. This is a hunt for a traitor, and we can't afford to be the prey." Mallory nodded slowly. "And who's the target? Do you have a name?" Alistair shook his head. "I don't, but I have a feeling. The man who orchestrated this, he had access to top-secret information. He had the power to rewrite reports. He had the authority to send an assassination squad after a single agent. The man who is our traitor is powerful, Tom. He's at the top. I need you to start looking for anyone who fits that description. I need you to go through the files of every senior officer in Section F. I need you to look for anything, a rumor, a whisper, a strange travel log, an unexplained financial transaction, anything that suggests a man living a double life, a man who serves two masters." Mallory nodded, a grim resolve settling on his face. "I'll get to it. And what about the girl, Elise? She's the other survivor, you said? She's in danger, too. The traitor will know she's a loose end." Alistair's face hardened. "I'm bringing her into my protection. I'll make sure she's safe. She's the key to this whole thing. She's the one who can identify the man who gave her the mission. She's the one who can corroborate the story of what happened in France. She's the one we need to protect." Mallory and Alistair shook hands, a silent promise passing between them. Two old soldiers, one a spy, one a policeman, united by a shared sense of duty and a common enemy. As Alistair left the office and walked back out into the rain-slicked streets of London, a sense of foreboding settled over him. He was a man on a mission, a man with a target on his back, a man who was about to go to war with his own organization. He knew the odds were stacked against him. He knew the traitor was a ghost, a phantom who could strike at any moment. But he also knew that he had something the traitor did not. A bulldog of a friend, an unwavering belief in the truth, and a ghost of his own, a girl named Elise, a phantom of the French resistance, a woman who had already cheated death once. He just had to make sure she didn't have to do it again. As he made his way through the bustling streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that every shadow, every face in the crowd was a potential threat. He knew his life was in danger, but more importantly, he knew that the fate of the resistance and the integrity of the SOE rested on his shoulders. He had to be smart. He had to be quick. He had to be a ghost himself. He had to disappear into the very same shadows his enemy inhabited. He had to find the list, and he had to do it before the traitor found him. Alistair's first step was to find Elise. He returned to the armory, the clatter of steel and the smell of oil a familiar comfort. He found her where he had left her, meticulously cleaning a different rifle, her hands moving with a fluid, almost meditative grace. She looked up as he approached, her eyes impassive. "Elise," he said, his voice low and urgent, "I'm taking you to a safe house now. No questions asked. We'll talk there, but we need to go, now." She didn't hesitate. She simply nodded, put down the rifle, and followed him out of the armory, a silent shadow in his wake. Alistair led her through the maze of London's streets, a constant vigilance in his eyes. He hailed a taxi, his gaze sweeping the surroundings for any sign of a tail. He instructed the driver to take a convoluted route, a series of detours and U-turns that would shake off any potential followers. He led her to a small, nondescript flat in a quiet neighborhood, a place he had rented years ago for emergencies. It was a place known only to him and a handful of trusted colleagues, none of whom were still in London. He locked the door behind them and drew the blinds, the room plunging into a comforting gloom. "Elise," he said, his voice a low whisper, "we are in danger, both of us. A coded message from your team, from Cecile, came through. She's in London, and she has a list of collaborators, and one of them is in SOE, a high-ranking officer. He's the one who set the trap. He's the one who wants the list back, and he knows you survived. He knows you're a threat. He will be coming for you." Elise's face remained a mask of calm, but Alistair saw a flicker of something new in her eyes. It was not fear, but a cold, hard resolve. A fire that had been dormant was now rekindling, a fire born of betrayal and a thirst for justice. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice steady. "We wait," Alistair replied. "We wait for Tom to find Cecile, and we wait for the traitor to make his move. He won't know where you are, but he'll know you're gone, and that will make him desperate. And a desperate man makes mistakes. We will use that to our advantage. We will draw him out. We will expose him, and we will get the list." They spent the next few days in the quiet confines of the flat, a silent vigil of waiting. Alistair went out only for food, his movements furtive and cautious. He made no contact with his office, no calls, no messages. He was a ghost, a phantom in his own city. Elise spent her time in silence, her hands moving with a practiced grace as she cleaned and reassembled the old revolver he had given her for protection. She was a different person now, her silence not born of a need to hide, but of a quiet readiness for a fight. She was no longer just a victim of a terrible betrayal, but a soldier preparing for a new kind of war. On the fourth day, a soft knock came on the door. It was a coded knock, a signal only Alistair and Mallory knew. Alistair's hand went to his gun, his eyes flicking to the peephole. It was Mallory. He opened the door, and Mallory slipped inside, his face a grim mask. "We have her," Mallory said, his voice a low whisper. "Cecile, she's at Scotland Yard. She's safe. For now." "The list?" Alistair asked, his heart pounding in his chest. Mallory shook his head. "She doesn't have it. She says she entrusted it to someone, a friend, someone she knew she could trust. She says she gave it to him before she was exfiltrated. She says he was the one who sent the message." "A friend?" Alistair asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "A friend from the French resistance?" Mallory shook his head. "No, not from the resistance. She says he was a British intelligence officer, a liaison from London, a man who was on the ground with her team." The air in the room grew heavy with a terrible truth. A British intelligence officer, a man from London, on the ground with the team. Alistair's mind raced, a terrifying thought taking shape. Who was the liaison for Le Foyer? Who was the man on the ground? He knew the name. He had read it in the reports. A name that was once a source of comfort, a name that was now a harbinger of betrayal. He felt the blood drain from his face, a cold dread washing over him. The traitor was not a senior officer in SOE. The traitor was a field agent, the man who had been with the team from the beginning, the man who had organized the mission, the man who had set the trap. And he was the man who had the list. Alistair's mind reeled, a new and terrible reality settling in. The enemy was not a ghost in London. The enemy was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a phantom in the field. And he had the list, a list that could expose a vast network of collaborators, a list that could bring down the entire French resistance. And he knew that the moment he found out that Cecile had survived, he would be coming for her, and he would be coming for Elise, and he would be coming for Alistair. Alistair looked at Elise, his eyes filled with a new kind of terror. He had to get to Cecile. He had to get to the list. He had to stop the traitor before it was too late. He had to go to Scotland Yard. But he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the moment he left the flat, the traitor would know where he was. The moment he made a move, the game would be over. The traitor would strike. Alistair's blood ran cold. The man who had the list was the same man who had been the liaison for the mission, the man who was supposed to be a friend, a guide, a protector, the man who was supposed to be on their side. Alistair had to think fast. He had to get to Scotland Yard, but he couldn't just walk in. The traitor was a man who moved in the shadows, a man who had already proven his ruthlessness. He would be watching the station, waiting for Cecile to break. And Alistair knew that the moment he showed up, the traitor would know he was a threat, that he was the one who had uncovered the conspiracy. He would become a target. He had to find a way to get to Cecile without being seen. He had to become a ghost himself. He had to find a way to move through the city, unseen, unheard, a phantom on a mission to save a ghost and a list. He looked at Elise, a new plan forming in his mind. He couldn't go to Scotland Yard, but she could. She was a ghost, a phantom of the French resistance, a woman who had already cheated death. She was the one who could move in the shadows. She was the one who could get to Cecile. He explained the plan to her, his voice low and urgent. "Elise," he said, "I can't go. He'll be watching for me." "But he won't be watching for you. You are a ghost, a legend. You'll go to Scotland Yard. You'll tell Mallory that you are there to see Cecile. You will tell him that the man who has the list is the liaison officer, the man who was with your team on the ground. You will tell him to find the name of the liaison officer. He will know who to look for, and then he will have the proof. And then we can expose him, and we can get the list back." Elise listened, her eyes fixed on his. She nodded slowly, a grim resolve on her face. "And what about you?" she asked. "What will you do?" "I'll be a distraction," Alistair replied. "I'll make a move." "A fake move. I'll make it look like I'm going to Scotland Yard. I'll draw his attention. I'll make him think that he has me trapped. And while he's focused on me, you'll go in. You'll get to Cecile. You'll get to the truth. And you'll get the list back." The plan was audacious, dangerous, and utterly insane. But Alistair knew it was their only chance. He gave Elise a small, worn photograph. "This is a picture of the liaison officer," he said. "The one from the files. The one I have a feeling is our traitor. Show this to Cecile. She'll confirm it. And then we'll have him." Elise took the photo, her hands steady, her eyes filled with a cold, hard fire. "I'll do it," she said, her voice a low whisper. "I'll get the list. I'll get the truth. I'll get justice for my team." And with that, she was gone, a phantom in the night, disappearing into the shadows of London. Alistair watched her go, a knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. He had just sent a woman who had already been through hell back into the fire. He had just put her life on the line again. He could only hope that her luck, her resilience, and her will to survive would be enough. He began his own charade, his movements deliberate, his pace slow, making it look as if he were headed directly to Scotland Yard. He could feel the eyes on him, the unseen threat closing in. He walked, his heart pounding in his chest, a silent prayer on his lips. He was bait, a decoy, a lamb for the slaughter. He was a man walking into a trap. Elise, meanwhile, moved through the city with a quiet grace, her footsteps silent on the rain-slicked streets. She was a ghost, a whisper, a shadow that moved in the darkness. She reached Scotland Yard, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the traitor was watching. She knew she had to be fast. She slipped past the guards, her movements fluid and practiced, a phantom in a war that had aged her beyond her years. She made it to the interrogation room where Cecile was being held, a solitary figure in a cold, lonely room. Cecile looked up, her eyes widening in recognition. "Elise," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and fear. "You're alive." Elise didn't waste time with pleasantries. She pulled out the photograph. "Is this him?" she asked, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "Is this the man who has the list?" Cecile looked at the photograph, and her face, already pale, went ashen. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's him. That's the one who gave me the mission. The one who was supposed to be on our side. The one who set the trap." She looked at Elise, her eyes filled with tears. "But he doesn't have the list." "He never had it. I gave it to someone else, someone I knew I could trust. I gave it to him before I left." Elise's heart sank. She had made a terrible mistake. She had just put her life on the line for a list that didn't exist. "Who?" she asked, her voice a whisper of desperation. "Who did you give it to?" Cecile took a deep, shaky breath, and the words that came out of her mouth were a dagger to the heart. "I gave it to the new radio operator," she said. "I gave it to the girl who was taking my place. The girl who was sent from London to replace me." She looked at Elise, a terrible truth in her eyes. "I gave it to Anya. I gave it to the girl with the scar on her jaw. I gave it to you." The world seemed to stop spinning. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, a terrible and magnificent tapestry of betrayal and conspiracy. The list was not in London. It was in the one place no one would ever think to look. The list was in France, and it was in her mind. The codes, the names, the locations. The entire list of collaborators. She had memorized it. She had carried it in her mind, a secret burden that had aged her, that had made her a phantom, a ghost. The list was not a physical document. The list was her. And the traitor, The man who had been hunting her for months was not just trying to kill a radio operator. He was trying to kill the living, breathing key to a vast network of spies. He was trying to kill the list. The realization was a gut punch. She was not just a survivor. She was a weapon. She was a weapon that the Germans desperately wanted to destroy. And now the traitor knew where she was. He knew what she was. And he would be coming for her. And he would not stop until she was silenced for good. She looked at Cécile, her eyes filled with a new kind of terror. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows I have it. He knows I am the list. And he knows I'm here. He's coming." And with that, the lights in the interrogation room went out, plunging them both into a silent, terrifying darkness.